Powered by Fantasyverse. Welcome to Turn a Page, the official comic book club for Nerd Initiative. Each week, the NI Bullpen will be covering the world of comics, talking to creators, deep diving into some fantastic stories, and much more. Now let's hand it over to the team and turn a page.
To an all-new edition of Turn a Page, the official comic book club for the home of pop culture positivity. My name is Ken M. You know me as the host of the ODPH podcast. I'm also Nerd Initiative Editor-in-Chief. To my left, you're right at home. He is the head of NI Wrestling, but he's also one of our featured editors at the Comics Bullpen. Please give it up for the one and only Rich.
What is up, everybody? We have a fantastic spur of the moment show, but fantastic show ahead, talking about one of my favorite characters of all time.
Yes, indeed, because this Saturday, September 20th, is Batman Day, celebrating everything there is about the Dark Knight of DC Comics. And this is a celebrated holiday for comic book fans and even pop culture media. I mean, you think about how Batman has crossed over into that genre. It's really been something fun to see, take a larger-than-life approach, would you not say?
Absolutely. First and foremost, this Saturday, you must talk all day in Batman voice.
Yes.
It's going to be bring some throat lozenges. It's going to be a hard day. But yes, it's Batman, of course, is a pop culture icon, right up there with any other icon. Like, well, in the comic book realm, you would say Superman, Spider-Man, for sure. And then, I would even take it a step farther and say that Batman is like Mickey Mouse. In any, the bat symbol, which you are emblazoned on your chest right now, is a symbol that is recognizable around the world. It's up there with everything else, including the Starbucks symbol, McDonald's golden arches. There's so much iconic stuff going on with the Batman franchise that, it's easily recognizable. And of course, that all started with some comic books.
Yes, indeed. And this weekend definitely is going to be a great time to go to the comic shops. At dc.com/Batman is the Batman Day hub where you can find out everything going on, especially at the comic shops. I know at Warner Brothers Studios, they're doing some really cool things at the tour. And especially, like I say, DC Infinite, if you're on that program, definitely a lot of cool things going down there. And I mean, no matter where you turn on HBO Max or anywhere that's really known to house DC Comics products, they're going to be pushing Dark Knight, especially they just opened up a new TikTok for Batman.
Yes, and on top of all of that, this is the lead in to New Comic Book Day, and DC is also hitting you off with a lot of new comic books this week that are in the Bat family, if you will, including some also Batman titles. So you're going to make sure you want to check out all of what they have to offer.
And Nerd Initiative will be covering it starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, giving you a lot of great Batman books, especially this week is going to be the Marvel DC crossover, Deadpool and Batman.
Ooh.
So perfect timing for that. But what we thought we'd do for this episode, obviously, is honoring Batman Day. Last year, we did the greatest Batman stories ever told. And since that time, there's been a lot of new Batman stories that have come out that we really think readers should check out. But plus, Rich and I also gave our top 5 picks for best Batman stories of all time. So chat, super chat, wherever you're going to be watching this from, throw your picks in there. We're definitely going to be commenting about it on next week's episode. But what we thought we'd do for this...
I will also say, to stop any arguments, this is not a definitive list. This is just our list of our favorite Batman books of all time, or runs, if you will, of all time. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. So do not fight and argue over what order they are coming in.
Yeah, but if you have some great picks that we didn't mention, we want to see them in the chat. We're going to probably inspire you to go check out some titles that you have not read yet. And this is going to be something just enhance the celebration of everything that is Batman. But before we get into our list, since last year, like we alluded to, episode TaP of 54, I believe, we broke down a lot of stories, but there has been 5 new ones that have jumped out that I really think fans should check out. First and foremost has been the new Batman #1 that's come out by Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez. This is the first time that they have done a hard Batman restart since the Tom King era after Rebirth, and obviously Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's run in New 52. So this has been a very cool book to see. Different take that you're normally used to with Batman.
No, definitely. And on top of that, as you can tell just by that cover, without giving anything away, you're looking at a completely different bat suit, if you will, different design and logo, although it has the markings of something classic. So I like what they're doing with the art, and the story is very good. If you haven't checked it out, you should.
Mm-hmm. Next up is one that I honestly have said outright on my blogs. I've said on the podcast. This is, for my money, the best Batman book on the shelves, without question. And it is a limited series known as Batman Dark Patterns by Dan Waters and Hayden Sherman. And it is set in that year 1, year 2 era of Batman. And they're all self-contained detective stories. So you're seeing how Batman becomes the world's greatest detective.
Law and Order meets Batman, if you will, because it's contained to itself. But on top of that, it's always a good time to go back and see Batman year 1 or year 2. I mean, I think that was why the giant success of The Batman a few years back was seeing a younger Bruce Wayne learning the ropes. It kind of, for all of us who have been so used to Batman being around, it's kind of refreshing to go back and go, oh, wait a minute. He wasn't always the world's greatest detective. There was a time where there was a learning curve. And I think that they handled that very well.
Oh, absolutely. Like I say, this series, for my money, is the best book. I think the presentation they do, like Hayden Sherman's panel setup, is next level. And the stories that Dan Waters has been weaving in there too, like I say, self-contained issues 1 through 3, that's one case. 4, 5, 6, another case. It's been great. I know it's on the final run for now, but hopefully we see more of it coming in the near future, but I haven't heard anything just yet. Next up is a series that is, really takes the Batman mythos and flips it on its own. It's Immortal Legend Batman. So this one is done by our good friends over at the Massiverse, Kyle Higgins, Matt Groom, Erica Durso, Igor Monti, and Becca Carey, who we know from Inferno Go Red with Tomorrow Villain, and Dan Moore has contributed some art for this. Definitely a new take on the tokusatsu version of their storytelling with the Batman mythos, and it's kind of merging everything together in a nice Elseworlds package.
Definitely. It's kind of one of those things, once again, refreshing, very familiar, but at the same time, very different. You're mixing a couple different worlds that are very familiar to everybody. It brings you kind of in, and at the same time, it's giving you something just enough different that you're like, oh, this is new.
Yeah. So there's one that you definitely want to go check out. Issue 1 just came out. Issue 2 is coming out very shortly. So this is one that I definitely think a lot more fans need to talk about. And then if you want to talk about a good throwback story too, Batman and Robin year 1. So this is literally the story of Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson in their first year as the dynamic duo, Mark Waid and Chris Samney, doing some amazing things. And if you know their work, like I say, they always take stuff to a next level. And this has been a very, very cool tale to follow along with, because we always think of Batman and Robin just working so well together and everybody's gelled. And this really shows about how their relationship has formed. And now we see that reflected in their bond today.
Once again, going back, doing some year 1 stuff, which is really good to see, because it's refreshing. I understand it's like kind of like a blast from the past, but at the same time, it's refreshing, especially with the lineage of Batman. But on top of that, the art, I love the art in this book because it gives you that throwback kind of art look. It's kind of like, it is the Batman that most of us grew up on and the Robin that most of us grew up on. And they capture that perfectly in the art, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. And then if we're talking about one of the best Bat series to come out in the past year, listen, we've talked to Scott Snyder in the past. We're definitely going to have him back on in the very near future, but Absolute Batman. I mean, if you want to talk about a game changer, and I hate saying that word, but this book really is. It has flipped everything you know about the Bat mythos to a 180. Scott and Nick are going some really, really great places with this, really pushing the creativity into some very dark spaces, but it makes sense because obviously being in the dark side universe, you're not going to have everything be very bright and happy. This is a very intense read, but it's fantastic in every single aspect.
We were all excited for the Absolute line. And when it launched, we didn't exactly know what we were going to get. Like there's inklings, obviously, there's writing on the wall. But we knew we were going to get something different. And this really blew me away. I know it blew you away. It has blown a lot of people away, because this is the complete opposite. This is not rich Bruce Wayne. This is more resourceful Bruce Wayne, also more gigantic Bruce Wayne. But at the same time, he still stays true to the Batman legacy. Like you would think that maybe we would go, we were all thinking the Absolute series are going to be a little darker, if you will. Not that it's not, in a lot of ways, but Batman still has his morals and his moral compass, even in a world where he is, let's be honest, like the most massive human being on the planet. If the aliens were to come invade, we would send Batman to fight them in that world, because like it's like night and day of what we get with the Bruce Wayne we're used to and accustomed to.
Yeah, everything's turned up to 10, but it makes sense. Like it's not done just for reasons. everything really flows well about the story and where he is now, and how those relationships with the rogues and his family are all put together. Like I say, it's something different. It's refreshing to see, and it's definitely going some places. And obviously, if you read the last issue, it really went some places as well. So no spoilers on this. I mean, highest possible recommendation for what we have here. And then who knows, next year, will it crack into our top 5 lists? Well, we have to kind of say the parameters we did was if it was released within the past year, we want to see a year's worth of books.
Mhm.
So that's why I kind of did not get the full push to the top 5 here. But rest assured, I'm sure that's going to be on a lot of people's lists, as it should be. But we said we want to break down the best of the bat. So, Rich, for your money, let's start with your number 5 pick. What's the best of the bat?
So before we go there, I just want to say there is other caveats. We did decide what we wanted to go more legacy. That's why Absolute Batman is not on the list, but it probably will be, let's be honest. So those people yelling at the screen, why is Absolute Batman not on? Trust me, it will be there because we're both fans. The other thing we wanted to make sure it was Batman, because one of the ones that I was thinking about was White Knight, but that's more of a Joker based story. So I kind of was like, we're going to stay away from it. We're going to go mostly Batman. This is Batman Day after all. And I understand the Rogues Gallery is part of that, but at the end of the day, it's still Batman. So that is why we had some picks. So once again, instead of throwing things at the screen or rating angry comments, that is our criteria for our list. But in my number 5 spot, speaking of which, is a legendary story with some of the greatest art of all time, in my opinion. Batman Arkham Asylum, of course, written by Grant Morrison, with the art by Dave McKean, and of course, lettering by Gaspar Saladino. This is one of the most legendary Batman arcs, possibly graphic novels, if you will, of all time, because I don't know of anybody who doesn't just read this in graphic novel form. And the biggest thing that sticks out and why it's on my number 5 when I was, putting this together, is because this one is really strong in the art. It's a great story. It's Batman having to go into, the lion's den that is Arkham Asylum after the inmates have literally taken over the asylum. And it's a who's who of the Batman Rogues Gallery that he has to go through on his way to getting to the Joker. But the art in this is phenomenal. This was also one of the very first times, if you look at the lineage, where we played around with a really psychopathic Joker. And I mean, I get it. He killed Jason Todd before this and everything, but like, this is like one on the level of what we would come to know later on, who's wearing people's faces and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. This is actually like lunatic Joker at its finest. And the art matches that perfectly. It's like a fever dream.
Well, that's one thing Grant Morrison does, is he's known to take characters and really push them to new places and interesting territory. And I think going here with the Joker, I mean, it's always been touched upon that obviously he's the walking definition of insanity. But I think in this situation, you really see him elevate to a new terror. And I think that this has been a benchmark book in the sense of establishing where his legacy was going, instead of more like the Batman 66 TV show. Like I say, where obviously, a presence itself, but nothing to the level that we see in this book.
Like I said, we've seen him do atrocities like the Joker, but at the same time, he was still always kind of the clown prince of crime. Yeah. Like that 66 thing kind of stuck for a long time, even when he did some outlandish things, because trust me, we could go to the list. And Jason Todd, of course, usually leads that list, of course, because this is pre that. But at the same point in juncture, this was like the first time, like I said, that we really got that horror element. I should say that's the better one. It's the horror element of the lunacy and just how crazy is it. And it's also one of the first times that he kind of mentions he's the yin to the yang of Batman, where the readers had always figured that out. Yeah. But this is one of the first times that the Joker is self-aware of that. And it's really pushes a lot of boundaries and stuff. And like I said, once again, if you do not have a copy of this, which I think, when you're born, you automatically get a copy of this. But I think that if you don't already have it, just the art alone is worth having it and setting it out. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's an amazing read. Next up, though, another one that's a big fan favorite here at the bullpen. But I know, Rich, this one definitely made your list easily.
Listen, this is one of those things where you take it back. Of course, Batman Court of Owls, the run written by Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo on the art, Jonathan Gilpian. So this is one of those things. Oh, sorry, Richard Starkings and Jimmy Betancourt. I don't want to not say that they're, because amazing work across the board by everybody here. This was one of those times in the Scott Snyder run, and this is one of those things where his creation of the Court of Owls to the Rogues Gallery was just awe-inspiring and tremendous. Over time, we've had a few different additions, but generally speaking, we look at the legendary Rogues Gallery, whether it's the Riddler, the Joker, Two-Face, Mr. Freeze. It carries on. And then, of course, you have your secondary ones. Condiment King, shout out to you. I know that'll pop Tom when he's watching this. But, other than those like kind of run-of-the-mill ones, we hadn't had like that next level. Like Court of Owls comes in. This storyline is so great that it instantly moves up, and the Court of Owls becomes as iconic in that moment as the Joker and everything else. And it changes the Batman universe forever. Because the Court of Owls now, as we know, have kept their grimy talons, if you are all over everything going forward. And also truths that we thought we knew in the Batman world, we find out aren't truths. And it all started with the Court of Owls. And it's such a great run, because who would have thought that on, one of the first major runs of Scott's, career on Batman, that he was going to create something so iconic.
Well, let's just think about the time it was in. New 52 was coming out. Scott was just coming in from doing a Detective Comics run there a little bit with the Black Mirror. And we knew that obviously he had a very big background in horror. Coming in with Greg Capullo and especially taking over the franchise book in this era, which, the New 52, we weren't sure what to expect. Was it going to be, extremely different than what we have previously seen? Was it going to be following the same vein? They hit the ground running, and to tackle bringing a new rogue into this world and giving that horror element to Batman, because of what he's always felt is Gotham is his city. Their entire run is a tragic love story for Gotham more than anything. So to upset that rhythm in the beginning and question everything Batman knows to be true really set the tone for the rest of their run. And I thought for doing this was a very bold risk, but it paid off. And a lot of it just has to do with how creative both those gentlemen are and what they made happen, which is simply magic.
And I want to throw it out there. This is also the birth of like one of the greatest comic teams of all time. Because now, like, even if you go to conventions, if Scott and Greg are at the convention, they're near each other because everybody is going from one table to get the autograph to the next one. And that just shows you how great the gels. Scott's writing is perfect for Greg's art. And I think it just speaks volumes. And like you said, the horror element, Greg brings that through completely, and the story just blows you away.
Yeah, top to bottom, their entire run is incredible to read if you haven't checked it out. But next up, I think this is one that is extremely high on my list. I know you had it on your list, and there's no way anybody is a Batman fan without saying this is on their list in some capacity. We're talking about The Dark Knight Returns.
That's right. Frank Miller on writing and art duties for this. Klaus Janson also on some duties. Coloring by Lynn Varley and lettering by John Costanza. No relation to George Costanza. But listen, The Dark Knight Returns. What can you say? Like, when you talk about iconic, was so much so that we're on the third iteration of it. They break it out every so often. But at the same point in juncture, what else can you say? One of the most iconic Batman arcs of all time. Frank Miller writing an old, grizzled Bruce Wayne who's just tired of the same old. We capture them, they go to Arkham, they break out, they wreak havoc, I capture them again. And you have to think that after a while, a grizzled Batman would be like, this is done. And this is the story of just Batman becoming the judge, jury, executioner. I'm tired of this old thing, to the point where Superman has to step in and kind of go, wait a minute, Bruce, you're way off the reservation. And it leads to an amazing battle between Superman and, of course, Bruce Wayne, or Batman, if you will. And that they kind of got a little bit in the Batman v Superman movie, minus the whole Martha bit, but yeah. But at the end of the day, showing that the two powerhouses can be on the same page at the same time. But great art in this. I think that when a lot of people our age, the elder millennials, Gen Xers, think about Batman art, they actually think about the Dark Knight art. It is pretty damn iconic. And then on top of that, it's like I said, it's one of those stories that changed the trajectory of Batman forever, because this does take place with an older Batman. And then we went back to the lineage of Batman and other stories. And it's still, you can see the effects. like the writers from that time on went, oh, wait a minute. Batman might have these moral standards, but we can push the issue. We can push how far is it going to go. And I think that that's one of the lasting legacies of The Dark Knight Returns is that you can now, after from that point forward, you could actually push the envelope about what Batman can and can't do.
Well, I think you have to realize at this time too that the norm of Batman, the stat quo, if you will, really had to be shaken up. And I think that for what Frank Miller did is he gave a version that I want to say was very grounded with a sense of reality to a degree, because of everything that Batman has gone through. You can understand where his character is at said point in time. Not saying it's the correct one, because I think this shows also ultimately of how Batman can also be a villain in certain aspects. And it really shows about how much he is a morally gray character and so committed to his own quest of vengeance that, yeah, he's willing to go cross a few lines. He finally has just had enough. And this really set the tone for where Batman can really step away from being what we know from the earlier iterations. Like, this is a very gritty take. It's one that I want to say borderlines on mature readers, but it works in its aspect about redefining what we know as the Dark Knight. And for its time, I mean, you have to remember this is like in the same decade of Watchmen, and you know how we went away from good guy versus bad guy, so to speak, and into a whole new element. And I think this Batman story really sets the pace for that.
Yeah, you definitely get away from the gee golly Batman into like, oh, Batman is a morally conflicted character. Like at the end of the day, he's a vigilante, and that is a gray area. And this just goes, okay, what happens when the morals go away? What happens when Batman / Bruce Wayne is just tired of the same old? And that's what this really gauges into. And then you have to have Batman as the villain, technically, going up against Superman, who is the hero to try to bring him back. And spoiler alert on an old book, but it doesn't go old Soup's way exactly. He's got to rely on a change of heart from one Batman.
Yeah, the ending there is a little questionable. I'm just gonna put it out there.
But once again, it was a big swing and a big swing at it, because you would think on paper there's no way Batman beats Superman ever, or comes up with what appears to be a W. And then you go, oh, wait a minute. And that would lead to other stories where we found out that the ingenuity and the world's greatest detective that is Batman just happens to know how to defeat anybody he has to.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of great stories that come from this. And honestly, this set a benchmark for many other decades worth of stories to follow about how you can make Batman into a very gritty character, and more so than he already was. But to really kind of play into that aspect, you get some fantastic stories coming out of it. But The Dark Knight Returns has to be up there. It's one of the greatest comics of all time, not even just Batman. That's how much it transcends the medium.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then obviously this one, as much as it is a Batman story, it is the perfect Joker story.
Yes. And it's kind of one of those ones that was on the edge. But when I'm thinking about it, this one, Batman, the Killing Joke, written by Alan Moore, art by Brian Boland, of course, colors by John Higgins, and last but not least, lettering by Richard Starkings. Amazing book. So yes, it does borderline on the Joker and his mischievousness. This one gives us some we can't use it on YouTube, but there's some things that happen with Barbara Gordon, and of course there's some things that happen with her dad, Commissioner Jim Gordon, in this book, really once again pushing the envelope as only Alan Moore can do. If you haven't noticed, some star-studded creators have touched Batman. You know, we're not even touching on all of them. I know we'll be touching on more on your list, but think about it. Alan Moore, one of the great writers of time. So why wouldn't Alan Moore go, hey, I'm going to take an experiment into depravity and really bring out some things that we question. And even Batman on this is very, he borderlines who's the villain. You know, granted, what the Joker does in this series is disgusting and disturbing, but Batman kind of equally matches him at certain points and junctures. But on top of this, we have one of the greatest final setup pages in the history of comic books. We have the final setup page that ends, and I love to say it, the American Psycho novelization style, where we have two people laughing at the end, and then only one person's laughing. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
And it's always been the argument, is this where Batman actually the Joker? Or is it all a dream and it's just, whatever? It's interesting. Of course, when they did the animated movie, they kind of gave it a more finality of what happens. But I love the liberty here. And I just that last scene where you have Batman and the Joker and you have it's going back and forth and Joker starts laughing and Batman starts laughing. And there's just this weird thing. And then all of a sudden the panels are black, but you only start to see one set of ha-has.
Yeah. It showed where Alan Moore took the character and really went into a frightening version of him that, with the heinous stuff that he did in the book. And that's why we can't show any of the pages on here pretty much. It was really showing about how disturbing this character is and understanding almost like the origin story of him. And to how he became this way. And it's a very disturbing look at the villain. And especially too, with how Batman is perceived in this too. Like it really does go into a lot of very uncomfortable places. So at the end there, like Rich alluded to though, it is one of the more questionable endings and leaves a lot in the hands of the readers to interpret, but it's still, for what it is. And this is one of the first, I would say, mature readers books of all time. It really set the tone for where you could go with characters. I would say mainstream characters more so than, an independent character, and really show how far you can really take something and run with it. Because this book definitely pushes boundaries, to say the least.
I've always thought that this was the inspiration for Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight. The sadistic, some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
Because like when you really realize why, when you get to the meat and potatoes of why the Joker's doing what the terrorizing that he does in this book, it's basically because I can. Because that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then you find out, like I said, it's one of those situations where Batman / Bruce Wayne is not a choir boy. He does a lot of questionable, not as heinous things as the Joker, but he does a lot of questionable things. And there's a lot of like, ooh, whoa.
Yeah.
And so you get to that end and you get to that finish. And it almost always has felt like to me is that the terrible things that Bruce / Batman thinks about himself, he sees in that moment in the Joker. And so there's almost like this sense when if you really boil it down, did he get rid of the Joker? Did both of them live in this whatever? Or if he does get rid of the Joker, did he get rid of him for the heinous things he did, or because he sees himself in the Joker? And it's almost like that weird, like he's getting rid of himself. And Alan Moore, whatever you think about him, is amazing at writing these really intricate, like pick your own adventure arcs. And he did it masterfully here. I mean, masterfully.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And yeah, I mean, it kind of gave the theory about could one bad day cause the Batman to become the Joker. I mean, it's a true story. You have to see with any kind of superhero when they have to deal with villains. Like, is there a moment that just pushes them too far? The Killing Joke throws that question on the table and then lets you, the reader, decide. And like I say, it's disturbingly brilliant, but it is, a comic that you can't deny as being one of the best Batman stories of all time.
For mature readers only.
Yes.
I stress that. Do not let the kiddos read this one until they get a little older.
No.
It is very disturbing. That brings my number one. And I had this is one of my favorites of all time, and that, of course, is Batman Hush. Jeff Loeb, of course, the great artist, and Jim Lee, Scott Williams, Alex Sinclair, and Richard Starkings. Hush is one of those characters, and I know, but we're not going to touch on Hush 2. No, we're not even touching it.
No.
But this was one of those moments. Jeff Loeb, much like I said about Scott Snyder earlier when I said about creating Court of Owls, Jeff Loeb creates this character in Hush that is amazingly iconic just from the jump. It is literally the antithesis of Batman. It is the same, like when you look at them, they're mirror images, more so than even the Joker. The Joker is the yin to the yang of Batman. They need each other. Whereas Hush this is exactly what happens if Bruce Wayne doesn't have the guidance of Alfred in his life and doesn't have the moral standards, because Hush is what would happen if Bruce Wayne didn't have those things. And of course, the backstory of them growing up together and, how basically Bruce may have lost his parents. However, he had that strong backbone and that search for justice. Whereas Hush, his parents were kind of disgraced, had it all, lost it all, and then gains it back as this like godlike surgeon.
Mhm.
But then that's not enough because he knows that the Batman is his old buddy Bruce Wayne. Like it's a weird dichotomy. So he's like, I have to one up Bruce. And that's his driving force. I want to make Bruce pay for the life I should have had. So instead of becoming a vigilante, he becomes a super villain.
Yeah.
And in a super intelligent super villain whose only flaw is the fact that he is not humble. He has, and that is what Batman will exploit when it's all said and done. But let's be clear. This is one of those books where Batman is on the ropes for 95% of the run. Like literally, Batman is like it's like Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman, Rumble in the Jungle. Hush has got Batman up against the ropes and just pounding him in. And then somehow he rope-a-dopes and he pulls it off at the end. And it's just such an iconic run. It's such a great story. It's a deep story. I still would say for mature readers, but not as mature as you need to be for the Killing Joke. But it's still one of those stories that when you read through it, especially as an adult, you go, wow, the layers of this. This is not just, when people are like, oh, comic books are for kids. This is a book that proves that comic books aren't just for kids, because I don't think a child is going to pick up on all the nuances and all the storytelling that is done here. And Jeff Loeb does an amazing job. And then Dan Moore. What can you say about, or Jim Lee? Sorry,
Jim Lee.
I said Dan Moore. I was skipping ahead for a couple people, but Jim Lee. What the hell can you say about Jim Lee's art in this book? Iconic.
Yeah, Jim Lee is one of the greatest artists of all time, and especially for him to come over and take on Batman. And what him and Jeff Loeb did, like you said, you add Hush in as a rogue, tie it back to Bruce's childhood, really take that psychological aspect into his character while weaving the story going on involving the rogues, Catwoman, and everybody else involved. It is a very complex story, and Jim Lee's art is just perfect for it. Like I say, there's so many iconic images you can see in this that, yeah, I mean, it just solidifies itself as one of the best Batman stories of all time. And even to think now it's going on 20 years after, like then it still stands up to this day, even though they are doing the sequel currently. And it is what it is. I'll leave it at that. You can read my reviews on it and kind of get my temp in the room. But that's just my opinion. If you love it, love it. I mean, like I say, but for the original, though, that is what really jumps out. That is something that I think fans really need to see. And I think going into Batman Day, if you haven't checked it out, definitely go down to the comic shops and go pick it up.
That is definitely it's a great arc to go through. And like I said, you won't be disappointed. Art, story, tremendous. And like at that point in juncture too, they make you understand very early on that Hush knows who Batman is before you put all the pieces together. That he knows Batman's Bruce Wayne, and at that point, it puts him on that, like an association. There's only one other villain at that time that knew who Batman was, and that villain, of course, is his greatest nemesis, and that's the Joker. So like instantly, you're like, well, if he knows who Batman is, that means he's on that same level, and then perception is reality, and then reality becomes reality. It's a tremendous book, tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. Great 5 books there. For me, obviously, we did touch upon The Dark Knight Returns, so that is one of mine, but we have to go into some other picks I have. And one, going back to the Scott Snyder Greg Capullo run, but this is the one for me that I would say is the definitive book from them, Death of the Family. And this is when Batman is confronting the Joker, who at this point had his face taken off in a previous series. And he's literally ending the Batman's family, the connection he has with Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Barbara Gordon, everybody. And how he does it is this really bizarre, you should be with me, like you should be focused on me. They're holding you back. I'm, making you better. And just systematically breaks down their relationship to the point where at the end of this, you can say Batman won ? But he really didn't, because of the damage that was done by the Joker. He got what he wanted, because it turns into, Joker's doing everything he does out of love for Batman. And then that turns to hate. And then it goes to show about how imbalanced Joker is, but it really gives a new look to their long-standing rivalry that in this new 52 era, we weren't sure what we're going to get to go back to it. Like, we have to kind of keep that in context. That does play a big part of this, but to see how Scott writes the Joker in this is really fantastic. And the art by Greg Capullo. I mean, what else can you say? Like, that next level stuff, top to bottom.
You take Killing Joke Joker, you mix that with Arkham Asylum Joker, and you end up with Death of the Family Joker, quite frankly, because it's the psychopath and it's the next evolution. I mean, he's got a face strapped onto himself.
Yeah.
Like he has no face technically.
I'm throwing the cover back up just to point this out.
Yes. He's got no face technically. And once again, the team of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo do such a great job in bringing the horror element, because this is a very horror-esque book.
Yes.
This is Joker also at the same time as insert your favorite slasher movie killer as the final boss, or a Hannibal Lecter, I even say, because there's a lot of degree to that. And also a starstruck fan, because he is just a fanatic. He comes off as so obsessed with Batman / Bruce Wayne that he is literally like he professes his love for him.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it is. But at the same time, it is just fantastic. The story is fantastic. The art is fantastic. As a matter of fact, Ron from the 3FN podcast for Christmas last year, he bought me the statuette of the Joker from Death of the Family. Oh my God, it's a great piece to have. It's got him in an iconic pose that Greg Capullo drew, and it's got you can see the faces off of it. It's phenomenal. And once again, iconic. It's just, you instantly see that variation of the Joker, and oh, that's what it's from.
Yeah. And it's one that just really redefined the character we knew. And to see where it goes now, too. The Joker has just been such a perfect villain for Batman, because Batman wants total control. He wants everything to make sense. And then when you have a character that literally is the walking definition of insanity, it causes for the great stories to go ahead. And then the next one up on my list is one that we didn't mention last year, because I was kind of debating about which one to go through, and I was putting this list together for this year. I thought it had to go ahead of a certain really long crossover, because I took Nightfall off my list, even though Nightfall is a great story. Do not get me wrong. But the ending there, I still kind of have a little issues with, a little bit. But this was one that I thought is very slept on, as far as it should be considered higher on the list of the greatest Batman stories of all time. And that's The War of Jokes and Riddles by Tom King, Mikel Janin, and their team. This is one set in the early stages of Batman, like a forgotten era almost, about how basically the Joker and Riddler declare war about who is going to kill Batman. And there is many, many tie-ins to this. Like all of Gotham City's rogues have to take sides. And how this is presented, it's brilliant. But it also really shows about Batman's relationship with the rogues. More importantly, Bruce Wayne's. So this is one that I thought really jumped out. I thought it was one of the best of Tom King's run on Batman that I think deserves a lot more attention. And just for what you see go down in this book, like it's absolutely next level.
I mean, Tom King had an amazing run on Batman. So it's kind of, I shouldn't say easy, but it's kind of, I'll use that word just because it's the easiest one to use. It's kind of easy to see how it would fall through the cracks, just because there's so much going on. Like once you have a great run, and you have some great stories, great books, it's easy. But this is one that even fell off of my radar. And I'm a big Riddler fan. And I was saying to Ken this morning, when we peeked behind the curtain, when we were having breakfast, I was like, my only problem is that usually in the comics, the Riddler doesn't come off as a great comic book villain. Like it was one of my favorites, because I remember being a kid and watching Batman 66, and you had the great, the character was larger than life, and especially for a child, it's great. And then you get into the comic books, and it's usually the Riddler's just like, the best way to describe him is the guy who takes you to the guy. It's like that. It's like Law and Order SVU. How they don't get the guy first; they get the guy that leads them to the guy, and that's usually the Riddler's role, unfortunately. And in this book, like I said, I marked it to go back and reread it. But in this book, it's different. He actually, I would say, that's one of my biggest things that I loved about the Batman, the recreation of a different form of the Riddler. And then you look at this book and you go, oh, somebody else. Tom King had that idea first. And honestly, after this, you're like, I really would like somebody to also take a gigantic swing. How many times you have this book? Maybe if it gets more popularity, you'll get that. You have this, and then you have the Batman, the movie, and it shows that you could make the Joker this completely, the Riddler. Sorry, I said Joker. I have Joker on the mind. But you can make the Riddler this completely different character than what we've dealt with in comics, period.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for any writer, I think, to really get something out of the Riddler, and especially get him away from what we know in pop culture. I thought the Batman movie did an excellent job to it. I'd like to see more of that version in comics. And I think we may in certain areas too. I don't want to do any spoilers or anything like that. But if I had to make my guess, I think we might see that happen in some series soon. But stay tuned. ...
Yeah, we no spoilers, but I'm always hoping.
Yeah,
I'm always hoping and praying.
But next up is one of the best Batman stories of all time, bar none. Jeff Loeb and the late Tim Sale did a murder mystery, stretched it across an entire calendar year, and really gave a new perspective on the world's greatest detective in Batman: The Long Halloween. Love the setup of this. Love how they incorporated every single rogue and tying it to a holiday. And I thought this was just absolute brilliance. I thought Sale's artwork is just phenomenal. And to really pen it to this dark tale, and especially walking a Batman that's not, Batman with prep time, if you will, going through trying to sort out who could possibly be the holiday killer. Then you get to that ending and it's like, what? That was a perfect detective story. And you understand why they went back and did the sequels there too. So like I say, it's one of those stories. I think it might not have jumped out at first, but it's word of mouth back in the 90s there, I think really carried it to where it became to the place it is now. Part
mafia book, part murder mystery, part Batman. Like it's kind of weird. And you get all of these different flavors, including a litany of the Rogues Gallery. A litany. There's so many guest appearances and like longer term, shorter term, and depending upon who were, like the story, and it weaves you through. And to masterfully plan out a whole year where you literally just keep baiting and switching who we think the killer is, and you go here and like how like the secondary rogues are all the ones that end up like leading you to different people. I thought it was just genius the whole way through. As much as we were talking about how War of Jokes and Riddles is one of those books that is kind of forgotten because of other things, and of course the Tom King run was so good. I think a lot of times people forget how good Jeff Loeb's run on Batman was. Some iconic books, and this is one of the most iconic. I know I put Hush up there, which is another one of his books, but this one's one of the more iconic books, period, for him. And boy, working with some amazing art. Tim Sale's art in this is just chef's kiss. I don't know. As much as I love everybody who's worked on it and done some tremendous art, I think that Tim Sale's on Long Halloween specifically really brings and captures everything that is Batman.
Yeah, it really is the aura that you expect with a story like this. Like I say, the late Tim Sale's artwork is just great everywhere. But in this situation, him and Jeff Loeb just made magic. I mean, that's the easiest way to describe this book. And it's well worth the read if you haven't caught up on this. And then one more story to go. And this is one for me, I go back and forth that this is my number one of all time. But Batman Year One, and everything going on here is just, when you think Batman, you think those early days, not everything is perfect, not everything is great, and you get this.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, like I say, this is just one that, when you start going with what makes Batman Batman and see him go through that first year of struggling to really establish himself, it really gives you that sense of purpose of what he is and what he's behind. And this, like I say, is this Frank Miller again, and just amazing.
Frank Miller did the most impeccable thing and most impactful thing in the Batman universe. He got de facto to write the beginning, and not the end, but the later stages of Batman. So with Dark Knight Returns, we talked about it. It's a grizzled Batman. This is a Batman who has just evaded everything that he ever stood for because he's just tired and he's grizzled, right? In this book, this is the angry, vengeful Bruce Wayne trying to figure out his way in the world of being Batman and the mistakes that you make. And also on top of that, learning that maybe the vengeance portion has to take a backseat sometimes. Maybe you have to kind of do things a little differently. And it's almost like the opposite learning. Like, he does start off very vengeful, very mind on revenge, because obviously his origins, but then as he goes throughout, he learns that, there's more of a nuance to this. And I think that Frank Miller writing this was the perfect choice, because like I said, he wrote Dark Knight Returns, where it's the opposite. It's basically him devolving back into the vengeful, revenge-minded, vengeance-seeking, revenge getter. And in this one, it's him going the opposite direction, going, oh, I'm starting off with revenge and vengeance on my mind, and I'm moving into, oh, there's more to be had here.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic. And like I said, Frank Miller's writing is just tremendous. Tremendous.
Yeah, he finds a way to really tap into the character and really draw out the darkness and bring it to the light. And it's a very, very legendary task to do, especially in those early stages, like I say, for the 80s. And you think about like what we get out of these books. Like I say, Batman Year One and then The Dark Knight Returns. Like I say, it's a lot to digest as fans, but it's one that really sustained now going in all these years later.
Yeah, and it's definitely shaped Batman.
Oh yeah,
like
completely.
Like you had years and years, like decades of Batman previous to these books, obviously, because this is 1980s. But Frank Miller's writing is, I think, where we turn the corner to modern day Batman. Mm-hmm. And like I said, he pushed certain envelopes, and he examined the character from almost like a sociological study of the character. And that was what allowed later on, when we're talking about great runs from Jeff Loeb or great runs from Scott Snyder or great runs from Tom King, we got to see them play in a field that I think Frank Miller really created by pushing the envelope. So I think that's where when you're looking at, who's responsible for like modern day Batman, I would say that Frank Miller is on the top of that list.
You have to put him up there. I mean, obviously the legacy lives on. Mm-hmm. And you think about where this all started in 1939 with Bill Finger and Bob Kane, and just where they've taken this character since then, and the evolution to now. It's he's a global icon. And especially when you go out this weekend, we can't stress enough, wherever you are in the world watching, celebrate the Dark Knight. And like I say, if you want more information on this, dc.com/Batman. That's where I'm getting all the information passed along to about Batman Day. So definitely go hit your comic shops up. Go check out on HBO Max. They got stuff going on. Wherever you are in the world, go celebrate it, because obviously these are some great stories that still impacted us as fans and are still doing it to this day. Like we alluded to, there's 5 great stories that just came out this past year that are really making a run for best Batman stories. We'll see how they end up on next year's list. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, long live the Bat. Need we say more?
Absolutely. And like you said, can't stress it enough. Go check out all the things that are going on for Batman Day, because there's a lot of stuff going on. I know as well, if you are near a Six Flags park, they celebrate Batman Day at the Six Flags parks too, because of their licensing with DC. So there's usually a lot of cool stuff going on at the parks. And like I said, the comic shops have got stuff. They really go across the board, websites, everything else. Like I can't stress enough. It's a great time to be a Batman fan on Batman Day every year.
Yeah. So definitely make sure you celebrate that. Let us know on Nerd Initiative social media what Batman stories you think are the best, because we definitely like having those conversations. You can find all that and more at nerdinitiative.com. And remember, keep an eye on the YouTube channel this week, because you never know. We're hearing that there might be some rumblings of some videos from off the cuff Tom there.
Off the cuff Tom. Yeah, it's easy for me to say.
It's easy for you to say, because I just usually say Tom.
Yes.
But he's got some stuff coming for Batman Day along with the rest of the bullpen. So, keep your eyes out, because we're going to be celebrating Batman Day along with everybody else this weekend. So it's a great time to be a Batman fan. So on that said, on behalf of Rich and myself, thank you for checking out another edition of Turn a Page. And we'll end it like we always do. When you're at the comic shops and you have a great issue in your hand, such as any of these Batman stories that we've mentioned, and you see somebody struggling to find something, hand yours off to them. Tell them to turn a page. We'll see you next time.
I don't wear hockey pants.
This program is powered by Fantasyverse, where manga, comics, and more collide. Check their website out, because it's not a dream. It's Fantasyverse. The content you've just watched is part of the Nerd Initiative Network. Make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to check out nerdinitiative.com, the home of pop culture positivity.